So, something about the lecture today. It's very theoretical, like I mentioned earlier. Um, and we are, again, mostly discussing some philosophies, some theories. Okay. So, if you want to basically have like some deathmatch in the background, game training, whatever, that is completely okay. All right. We'll look at minor gameplay and we'll look at one case study of like Haven Seaside hit. Okay. Today's lecture obviously is about adaptations. All right. A little bit background about myself. I'm Coach Blue. I've been coaching for almost 6 years now. Professionally, mostly tier two, which means challengers in Valorant and contenders in Overwatch.
Blue, where are you from?
I'm from India actually. But most of my experience coaching, well, I used to play in Texas, um, like collegiate, top eight. And most of my experience coaching is in Europe, in tier two Europe. And then I coached a lot in NA as well, tier two. And sometimes I would coach in APAC in my region, where I reside. But what basically that has done for me is like it's given me different sort of perspectives on how people look at the game in different regions, right? Each region, I think I was just talking about this earlier. Different regions have different philosophies on how to approach games and esports in general, right? So I try to bring like the best of all the regions, that I learn. And obviously, since I'm coaching usually tier two, that means I get to practice and play against tier one teams like Fnatic, NRG, EG, Paper X. So that's always nice as well. So all the things that I've learned there, I try to bring them to us and to my teams as well. Today's topic is a little bit more ranked oriented. Okay, because we're gonna be talking a lot about adaptations. Okay, adaptations and Valorant, and the idea is basically, what we're trying to do again. Most things that we sort of encourage in Gosu is teamwork oriented, right? Which is we plan things a lot, we try our best to coordinate things, right? But what happens when those things are not happening? What can you do as a player? All right. So those are the things that we're trying to focus on. And adaptation is usually the answer to it, right? The reason why I'm doing this lecture again, class today is I think 2-3 days ago someone asked me, which is like, okay, what is the next class that I'm gonna do? I thought a little bit about it, and this seemed like the most important thing that people should know while they're playing the game. Okay, and again, this is okay. So we'll start with the tell story. This actually happened in a recent 10-man actually, but it has happened in some ranked games as well, where players would come to me for coaching, and I see their gameplay and something similar happens, right? So it's a typical story where any player starts a ranked game. We'll call the player Timmy, right? Timmy has an expectation. He has a sequence in his mind when he's hitting Haven Seaside. Okay, so before we actually go here, so when you're hitting Haven Seaside, what kind of utility do you expect? Let's say you're attacking, right? And you're the jet. So let's go here. Nice, we're straight into C. Okay. And you are jet. What kind of utility do you expect? And who do you expect on site most of the time? Any
Probably
idea?
a sentinel.
Do you want us to answer?
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
are we running like default comp?
Yeah, default comps.
Like, are we assuming?
Meta comps, let's say.
Okay. Sova Dart backside
Okay.
and smokes for CT and garage.
All right.
We expect Omen backside with the half side smoke with blind prep probably.
Okay, nice. I like that.
Probably a
Fantastic.
sentinel.
This
Usually
is
a
really good.
cipher trip,
Okay. All right. So cipher trips. This is
which we usually break with the Sova.
nice. This is great. Okay. So I really like this answer because this is what happens in like high elo a lot more, right? This is like sort of the correct way to play C, quote unquote correct way. And this is nice as well. Every once in a while you're gonna run into cipher. So it's usually one of the two, right? Either the cipher is gonna play A site, the Omen plays here, or the Cypher plays here, and then the Omen is like maybe Garage or A side, like, playing on top of these things. But these are usually our expectations, right? Now Timmy goes into the game, he expects certain things like this as well, right? And he basically expects his Soa to recon and shock, right? And well, his teammates aren't perfect, right? Because no teammates are perfect in ranked, and they jumble their utility, right? And Timmy misses his timing, right? So he gets caught onto the site alone. I think this happens a lot, right? It's a very, very common thing. The problem is Timmy gets tilted for 6 rounds. Again, his performance drops, comps drop. Again, this is sort of fictional, but really, I've seen this way too many times. Okay. And because of tilt, obviously, the impact on his gameplay is going to be multifaceted, as in, like, for the next few rounds, he's not going to be entering as much because he would tell me that, okay, my team is not supporting me, there's no good utility, so I'm not going to enter anymore, right? That's not very good, right? So why is this happening? I think it's because of expectations. I think very fundamental thing in I think it's a bit about human nature, which is why do people get upset? It's mostly because our expectations exceed our exceed the reality, basically, right? I think that's the number one cause of tilt, which is like we expect too much from our teammates, right? And I think here specifically it's about comms and coordination. Like, they expect too good utility, expect people to 3, 2, 1 enter, right? At like high levels of comms. And things like these are said a lot. Like, it's a team game, and my teammates don't know how to play, and we can't communicate, we're gonna lose, right? So all of these things, again, while they are partially true, that these are things that we should aspire for, right? It's not something that we should expect. Okay. This is something that happens in my experience, especially coaching in Gosu, happens once in every 7 to 8 players. And if you have played in higher elo, and maybe because of a ranked reset or just in general you stop playing and your rank depleted over time, right, you're gonna run into this a lot more, because playing in higher ranks sets your expectations to like a certain level, and as you go lower, right, people are not gonna meet those expectations as well, right? So it's like very, very easy to get tilted off of this, right? So it's sort of really important to sort of keep this in mind and really go into games and set your expectations to sort of 0, right? But if you set your expectations to 0, which is like people aren't going to coordinate all the time, people aren't going to communicate properly all the time, people will make mistakes, you will make mistakes, right? How do we proceed? Right? What do we base our gameplay in, right? That's where adaptations come in. Okay, so more than relying into coordination, more than relying into the meta, how the game is generally supposed to be played, what I want you to do, and this is what I was telling or thinking about earlier when someone asked me what is the most important thing that you need to learn about Valorant, which is adaptation matters more than anything else. Okay, the gameplay would be chaotic, right? Even in, like, I think I mentioned this here, right? Even in the best professional games that we've ever seen in Valorant, okay, the ones that I personally consider to be the most flawless ones or beautiful ones were in Lock-In when Fnatic was at their peak. Even in those games, even in their best games, 2 to 3 rounds, they would mess up their coordination. That would look like they're throwing, right? And planning would basically fall apart, right? So even in the best of Valorant ever played, observably, right, coordination falls apart all the time, right? So again, adaptation is the core skill that you should focus on more. Okay. Now, planning and coordination don't work 100% of the time. It's fair. Planning should change rapidly with new situations. This is another thing that I see people tilting off of, like, all the time, which is, and this happens in our 10 months especially more, because we come in with more planning and preparation, right? So that also increases your expectations as to, okay, we discussed this in our Valo plan. We made this plan and we're going in with it, right? Why are we not following it? So very simple thing that happens in this game is let's say something that you should understand. This is a fundamental that I start every team that I've ever worked with. It doesn't matter if they're high level, which is you come into a round with a plan of your own, okay, and the other team comes in with their own plan. We call this openings, basically, sort of like chess, right? We have an opening of ours, they have an opening of theirs, right? And what our job is to do is read their opening as soon as possible and adapt our opening according to what would counter them, right? And a big part of it is we want to sort of predict what kind of opening they would come up with, right? Are they going to be coming in with an A default? Are they playing A for a retake? Or are they going to be pushing down mid because their economy is low? Right, so a little bit of prediction is involved, but always we observe first as a part of our default. At the beginning of the rounds, we predict, and in the first 5 seconds, we look, are they doing the things that we predicted? What are they doing? Are they taking space A long? Are they pushing mids? You know, what's happening on C, right? In the first 5 seconds, we need to understand this, okay? Then we go for a counter. Then we go for a response, okay? Attack or defense, it doesn't really matter, right? So this sort of adaptation as well is absolutely essential. You cannot just come up with a plan at the beginning and brute force it. Usually you can only do that, let's say if someone calls, hey guys, let's do a C split, like, you know, force a C split or force an execution. You can sort of do that. It's not very high success rate. Even when you go for a C split, you should do some observation in the first 5 seconds, okay, or any execute. And always whenever you do call executes, they should be based on some sort of predictions that A site is weak, so that's why we should probably go for like a lurk up here and then peek a little bit and then execute this area, right? So, but again, super important that you observe what's happening on the other team and then you make adaptations mid-round, okay? Right, so this is super important. Again, when all else fails, when your planning fails, coordination fails, adaptations win. Right? I think so far so good. So that's basically, I mean, that's theory, right? That tells you why it's important, right? How to adapt better is something that we want to work on a little bit more. Okay. We'll talk about some key skill sets that you need for adaptation, right? Off of this example that we just saw on Haven, right? The macro example even, right? Prediction matters a lot. You need to be able to predict things. You can only predict things if you understand a lot about the game, how the meta gameplay is played at different levels. At your level, we'll talk about the levels of prediction as well later on. Observation of all factors that follow straight from these predictions, right? It's very important. Observation needs context, right? It's not just observing everything. You can get like overwhelmed with information that way, but you want to come up with an idea before you start playing the game, observe the things, and then sort of compare them with your predictions a little bit more. Other things that you'll need to adopt will be awareness. I think some of this was discussed earlier in Arch's class that happened, I think, yesterday or day before. So if you haven't been through that class, you should look at it. It should be on the website. Okay. And then lastly, for adaptation, obviously action is like super important, right? on timing. Okay. One thing about observation, again, this like keeps you from tilt, is skill of observing things without judging them so much. This is a very key aspect of playing any sort of sports. These are a couple books that I would recommend if you are into books and want to read a little bit more about esports or high-level performance sports. One is The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galloway. It's like the Bible for most esports players and teams.
Yeah, I love that book. Read it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and again, it teaches you. What's that?
'Cause I would like to switch it up. Could you just drop it in, like, the name of it in the chat so I can just quickly, like, because
Sure.
I can see the first one, the second one though is the one I.
Okay, it's The Inner Game of Tennis. Let me write it down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't even like to read. I just listen to the book
Yeah,
in a game
same.
of tennis,
Mm,
and that was perfect. I
Same,
learned
same.
so much from that book.
It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, it is really.
Yeah, I'm also an audiobook kind of guy. And the other book that also talks about this is from a coach. Again, it wasn't the head coach of Astralis. If you know about Astralis from CS:GO, he's like he was in, I think, in military, I think special units. Came into Astralis to fix their motivation issues that they were facing after becoming the best team in the world. Give me 1 second. Okay, I need a little bit of water. Okay. But the key skill is observation without judgment, which is not really looking at things as they are. You know, if someone makes a play, let's say if the smoke is used, let's say there's a smoke used and C main. Let's go back to this. And let's say it's used something like this, right? And there's a slight gap here, right? And you could go here and you could look at it and like say, oh, it's a shit smoke, right? And you might ignore it, right? Or you might, try to be like judgmental of the other player, right? Or say like not really care too much about it, or just look at the smoke that the smoke has a gap and you can exploit it, right? So it's like a slight difference in thinking, right? Maybe not the best example, but it's important to sort of make that distinction when you're playing in general. Okay? It saves you from a lot of trouble, especially whenever you are playing yourself, okay? And you're observing your own gameplay or observing your teammates' gameplay as well. So let's say something like this happens, right? And you notice the gap here, right? You could call out your teammate for it, so like, oh, your smokes are shit, right? And that can be really, really bad for your teammates, right? Can create a really bad environment, right? So observing without judgment is like a super important thing that you want to start doing a little bit more. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into these skills. We'll talk a little bit more about micro adaptations, and this is really the key aspects that I really want to talk about a lot more than anything else. Okay, this I think matters most in ranked games as well. Like I said earlier, coordinations is not gonna happen. Like coordinations aren't gonna happen all the time. People aren't gonna use the best utility, right? So what you need to understand is what are the things that are essential whenever you're taking a team fight, so to speak, when other people are involved in your own fights, right? We're not going to talk too much about individual fights, how you take one-on-ones, right? It doesn't matter as much, right? But there are some fundamentals that matter when you're taking team fights. Now you can sort of it's almost like a step-by-step thing, right? And we'll go back to our previous example when we went to Seaside, right? So these are the 4 things you need to do in order to take a space, right? When we're taking Seaside, for example, taking a space as a team could mean that you're hitting the site as attackers, right? So you could be doing something like, an execute, like a C split or just a C hit. It could, taking a space could mean that you're retaking the C site as well as defenders, right? Taking space or taking a team fight could be maybe you're fighting for other space, right? Maybe you're fighting for this area, right? Either way, whenever 2 or more people are involved, mostly 3 to 4 people are involved in taking any space, we'll consider that a team fight. And there are fundamentals of taking team fights, and those are, one is isolation. What you want to do is, let's say you want to take this space, or let's go back to our C example, right? Which is, let's say we want to take this space, right? So first we got to isolate it from the rest of the players who might be coming in, right? They might be coming in from here, right here. So for that, obviously, as we called earlier, smokes, right? These are the pieces of utility that we use. Okay. Next thing is reducing space, as in you can't just take all of the space most of the time, right? You're going to be coming out from here. Maybe 2 people, 3 people get to fight, right? Maybe they'll use some mollies, maybe they'll blind you to stop, right? So you can't be just running in and expecting to fight everyone, right? Because you're gonna be running into people playing here, here, maybe here, here, right? These are all the positions that you sort of run into, right? Every once in a while, people will play here, and then you might see people who are like playing here. So many places to clear. Can't really work on that, right? So then we work on reducing the space, and for that we do nades and mollies. So a common thing to do on this map is to do something like an aftershock here. So it removes these two positions, right? So this is gone, right? Every once in a while you would use like molly lineups or shock lineups. Could go here, could go here, could go here. Like this is a good molly, for example, if you have lineups or if you're playing KJ, right? Because what it does, it removes this position and also anyone who's trying to enter back into the site from this mode, right? That could be nice as well. But you could use things like this. Molly could go here, for example.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So, having like a breach stun and omen blind, is that reducing space or is that something else?
That would be the next thing, which is
Oh, I see, I
debuffs.
see.
Right. So debuffs are things that help you take your fights. Right. So let's say there's a target here, right? Or there's a target here. So a common thing to do during the exit is, again, like you said, recon here, like this recon, for example. Right. So it highlights your targets. Right. So that's a bit of a debuff. These are things that we discussed in the last lecture. I'm gonna redo this again. I think we don't have the recording uploaded for. I think the lecture was about util mechanics. Let's actually go to it. It's gonna be good. So we did a lecture about mastering util mechanics, and there we basically categorized all the pieces of utility, which was one was for isolation was space denial, which was again nades, molly, smoke, right? Debuffs would be stuns, flashes, vulnerable. Information would be your drones, basically drones and recons, right? Movement would be TPs and dashes and satchels. Okay. But stuns, flashes, recons, all of these things, they make your 1v1s like a little bit better, right? It's gonna be easier when an omen who's playing back here is highlighted by the recon. It's gonna be even easier if he's flashed, right? Even more easy like if he's stunned as well, right? So the more debuffs you can add, the better, generally speaking, right? But you don't want to burn all your utility either.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
For recon utility, wouldn't you want that to also dictate how you use your space denial utility, so that you force them to swing into you?
I like that. Okay, so now we're getting into an adaptation area. So how we approach in Pro Tier is all of these pieces of utility are decided, and the way we do it is we pre-plan basically. Okay, the aftershock is going to clear all these things. During our dash, the jet would turn to the left so we can see whether people are here. Okay, and then the recon catches specific locations, right? That the flashes can push people into, sort of, you know what I mean? So during tournaments or during pro play or team play, we pre-plan these things. In our 10-mans, we pre-plan these things. But what you're getting at is what the lecture is about, which is adaptation, which is, okay, if the recon is used, right, and we figure out some people, like maybe the recon is used here and then we hear a shot breaking the recon from back here, then we can adjust our flash or our stun based on this, right? So let's say we heard the shot coming in from here instead, then obviously you can stun here instead, right? So that is exactly what the lecture is about. It's adaptations, right? So you're catching on to something nice. All right, going back to this next, which is the last part of any team fight, that we take, not just executes, is scaling, right? Which is sort of taking space onto the side, right? Now, scaling could be either you dash in, you satchel, you TP, or you just walk in if you have nothing else, right? really depends. Okay, most of the time in higher elos, like if you're running an omen and a jet, like what we're gonna do is in this particular exec, the meta exec, what we do is we do a little bit of a dash here. Actually, we put the smoke here first, updraft, and then dash inside the smoke. Usually, this is like very common, very typical way of executing CSI. Okay, that's scaling, and on top of this, it's sort of becoming more and more meta, because what's going to happen is as soon as you start throwing your utility, people on the site are going to try to stop you, right? So you don't want just your jet to be inside the site solo, right? People will try to stop you with mollies, with blinds and stuff, right? So you don't want her to be solo. So a lot of the times the omen would TP onto the site as well. Okay. Now these are all the things that are supposed to happen. Okay. Obviously. When else are you trying to talk to me? I think you're muted. Okay. So going back to this. All of these things are supposed to happen. This is how the game is supposed to be played. Obviously, when you play ranked, a lot of this is gonna get missed. Not only will utility be missing, they will be off timing a lot, right? They will be discoordinated, and it's gonna be really, really problematic, right? So that's where it's essential to adapt and to sort of notice, observe how things are happening, what are the pieces of util that we're missing, okay, where the timings are an issue, and how you can use your own sets of utility to sort of plug those gaps and you know, still have like a successful execute, still have a successful team fight. Okay, so again, to understand that, again, this fundamental of any team fight are essential. Now, once you know these, like these are the things that we need, right? We need to isolate the targets on site. We need to make sure that we're not fighting everyone on site. Okay. We need to debuff our targets, and then we need to scale properly. Okay. Now, when we're playing the game, okay, let's take an example here. Right, so let's say we are running the omen here. Here's still your jet, right? And maybe let's say we use a recon again here, because this happens a lot, right? Smokes are gonna be normal, but let's say this smoke is missing, okay? And let's say, for example, that the stun was used on the left, right, by the breach, right? And the omen is not with you to enter, okay? And all right, and as you're entering, let's say the flash doesn't happen, okay? As a jet, like how would you switch things here? You can't just dash and updraft and enter the same way usually, right? Because a lot of the things have not been cleared, right? This guy is not entirely marked, because even if you go here, right, if it breaks the recon, right, let's say the recon is broken, this is still a fight that's dangerous, right? And let's say the flash is not coming in, right? How should you approach it?
You want to try to isolate the fight, probably.
Yes.
Maybe if you take front sight and not peek backside at all,
Yes.
and then you take garage or something.
Lovely.
Would be my
Lovely.
idea.
Okay. Fantastic.
And you can even, yeah, you can even use your jet smoke as smoking garage.
Fantastic. All right. So our first threat is this line, right? Which is, this is completely open. So we can't exactly just cross this and not expect to be, you know, shot in the back, right? And obviously, it's not just about us as a jet player, right? We're dashing into the site so that people look at us and our teammates can follow up. You know what I mean? That's really the point of dashing into the site, right? But if I dash in here, right, if this line is still open, then my teammates die anyway. So it doesn't matter if I dash in, right? So I need to take care of this, right? So one way to deal with this is obviously to smoke it off. That's the job, right? Now these smokes don't last too long, right? So I really like this idea from you that we're no longer fighting for backside anymore, because we can't afford to.
Yeah, I was thinking about like having different stages.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's weird, but
Lovely. Yeah.
like usually you have like stage 1 usually is maybe garage and long,
Yep.
and stage 2 is front side, stage 3 is back side. And
Nice.
it's quite the same concept when you're retaking a site.
Yeah.
You don't want to take everything at the same time,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
some teams do, and
Mhm.
that's usually why teams lose.
Yeah. That's lovely. I love that. Yeah. So isolating this area first, I would say, because again, we're not going for a split here right now, so you're gonna have to start with this area first, right, and then turn that into, you know, fighting and like keeping garage a little bit safer, right? So let's go back to the situation. Now you have 2 smokes. Where would you like to use the smokes? Let's say we don't have a flash, right? We know this, that we can't take a backside fight. We have established this. This is good adaptation. All right. So 2 smokes, 2 jet smokes as a jet, because again we are only an individual, right? The rest of the team coordination comms, we can't expect that, right? We're missing some utility, right? And there's
But
only
we still
smoke.
don't have util to clear like close angles besides the
Yes.
stun close left, so we still have to use 1 smoke for ourselves as we dash in,
Okay.
and then the
So
other smoke goes to garage.
right. So since we can't fight for backside, right? We can't use the updraft to go up here, right? So where would you like to dash?
If possible, I think if you can get there after the stun goes, I would
Mhm.
rather go towards plat,
Nice.
like
Okay.
in that corner.
Cool.
So that way I don't have to worry as much about getting shot from backside
Nice.
as
I
I
like
peek
that.
garage.
That's beautiful. Fantastic. All right. So we don't have to worry about this anymore. And then, oh, unlucky. But okay, we dash here like that. Okay. The next smoke. Once you dash in here, where are you gonna use the next smoke? Okay. Now we've we've used our dash and we've used our one of the smoke. The next smoke. Where do you want to use it?
Front garage
Front garage,
so that
okay.
first I can peek.
Mhm.
So, and then from there I like peek like close,
Mhm.
like behind me with the corner if I didn't check it visually,
Nice.
and then also the close corner in front of garage.
Okay. Cool. Like something like this.
And then after the smoke fades, then I take the fight garage.
Nice. Okay. All right. Any other ideas?
It really depends if they
Okay.
smoke off the
Mhm.
site like an omen. In
Alright.
ranked, they never do that. so-
Exactly. So we're not gonna consider this, right? So this is still open, right? So right now there are 3 lines that are open. This one, and this one, right? Now which one is the most dangerous? So like which one needs to get plugged? Because you have the option to smoke here, and smoke here. Yeah. Which one should you plug most? Like what do you think? Because your teammates are entering here right now, right? Let's consider maybe a cipher coming in with us, right? So they need to enter. Which one is the most important for you to smoke? I would really say that rather than smoking this, you should actually smoke this instead. And my reasoning behind that is, the smoke for garage needs to be long, like long term. You need to cover this line for a long period of time, right? This is not really a huge threat for us because there's 3 of us like entering here. We'll consider 2 entering here. You know what I mean? So people can't really fight this constantly. You know what I mean? Generally, this area gets spammed off, right? And then if we smoke this area, by the time my teammates get here, the smoke would fade. Correct. So the smoke doesn't really allow us to do a whole lot apart from cross this over. So what you can actually do is like dash in here and then take this fight directly. You know what I mean? It's a very high risk thing to do, but you fighting this buys more time. You know, it clears this angle for a longer period of time, right? And then this smoke allows us to cross this like a little bit faster. You see what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Is there any way where smoking yourself is a bad idea? Like
um
saving 2 smokes?
I like that. I like that. Okay, so you could actually just dash in here and like throw
Yeah.
a smoke here first, like either one way this and smoke here first, um, something like this, and then just dash up here. That's even better. I don't think that would be too bad. The thing about smoking yourself is like, if people are playing on site, you know, here and here, right? If you just dash in right away, obviously you can't equip your gun right away, right? So that's a problem. But if you can cut this off with the smoke, for example, right? Smoke here and dash here, then the smoke not only saves you, but it also allows your teammates to enter. So that's even better. These are great. This is micro adaptation, right? And this is what you're supposed to do when you're playing the game. Mostly when you play ranked, this is how you're supposed to approach the game, not the other way around, where I have a standard which is like, okay, I have like a sequence that I'll always go for, which is updraft dash on top of this with smokes, right? And then we're missing utility, and my teammates are not able to enter, right? Because my both smokes, because whenever you do this, both of your smokes are generally used here. You don't really use the second smoke to plug anything. And now my enters can't, like my teammates can't enter, and my smoke fades. I don't have any flashes to fight this backside guy, and I get shot from here. I get shot from here. My teammates don't get to enter. Right? So that's the difference. That's why we need this, these micro adaptations. That's why I need to play like this a lot more. Okay, that is the most fundamental thing that I want to talk about today. We'll talk a little bit more about small things later. Right? But try to remember these things, those fundamentals of team fights. Right? Whatever we're missing, isolations, reductions, right? Like, obviously as a jet, you don't have too much to debuff people that you're fighting. As a jet, the way you get an advantage on any target is through your movement more than anything else, right? But isolation, reduction, debuff, and scaling, right? And anything that's missing, anything that you can plug, that's better. If you're playing with a duo, right? Almost all of this gets taken care of, which is why like it's fantastic to duo in this game. Okay, because two people are playing together. Even if you can coordinate with one person out of like 4 other people, let's say you're playing solo even, right? There's always at least one person that you can talk to in the game, right? Let's say the other people are being toxic or whatever, you can mute them and go on. But even if one person you can coordinate with, 2 agents are sufficient to pretty much cover all of these things. Okay, and once you realize this, you plug all of these things, you can take any team fight. You don't have to rely too much on coordination and communication at all. Okay. Another way to look at it is to duck, weave, stack, and strike, which is, you dodge things that are missing. Any lines that are open, you dodge them. Any utility that gets thrown on you, you dodge through that. Stacking is basically the debuff part, which is any utility that is used creates a timing for you, right? Any utility used from your team for their team is a small distraction, is a new factor into the fight, rather than in the team fight you being alone. Now there are 2 factors. It's you and some piece of utility, right? So you can stack upon that, and then strike on a good timing, basically. All right, that's mostly it. Next thing that I want to talk about is body language adaptation. This is another thing that's super important, which is like a really good way to play without comms, so to speak. Now, obviously, I'm not encouraging you guys to not communicate, right? Obviously, that's ideal that we have good communication, but in case communication isn't possible, or better yet, now this is something that we use in Pro Tier. You only Okay, so you're one person, you can only talk about one thing at a time, right? So it will be nice if you don't have to communicate about movement, and coordinating peaks with your teammates. So you can talk about targets, about utility, about their what they're likely to do. So it opens up comms as well. So it's sort of like a really nice thing to do. Is to read body languages. It's a very, very important thing to do in the game. We're gonna go towards I think an example here. I don't really have an exact example for body language, but maybe we can try and find something. Okay, so let's say we start here. I want to see like a good POV from where we're taking team fights. Okay, is this a good one? Yeah, this seems decent. Okay,
don't know what else you can do, but
You are divided.
oh, you did.
Oh,
So
fuck, I
good.
fucked it. I fucked it.
Pop your cage. Pop your cage.
Should we go for this? Okay.
You walked through a wall.
Wipe drone?
Oh, this was rough. I think he just dashes into the smoke, into the drone.
I don't know what else
It's
you
kind
can
of
do,
funny.
but
You are divided.
Let me try to find a better example.
Wait, not this 10-man.
You were there?
Not this one. No. Yes, I was the Astra.
Oh no. Yeah, don't worry. I'm not talking about your stuff. Okay, let's see this.
Karen, probably need to break that. It's on me. It's on me.
Okay.
I want to play in the smoke.
Okay.
So calls are made here, right? Is playing in the smoke. Okay, so body language, basically reading body language means, okay, so right now, okay, obviously we're watching from observer POV, right? So we can see silhouettes of every player, right? But the game basically, it very conveniently tells you what your teammates are doing. You can just look at them, right? So based on this frame, let's say you are a player observing the silhouettes of your teammates here and here, right? What do you think Mr. Goat is gonna do in the next 2 seconds? Next 3 seconds? Like, where do you think he's gonna peek out from, or is he gonna play inside? What is the Vice gonna do? Any ideas? Is the Vice looking for a fight? Is she trying to fall back? Is she playing passive, aggressive? What is the idea?
The Vice has a line on the jump across the
Okay.
across the I forgot what it's called. The rubble part on
Correct.
the left side of the site. Astra can't really help with that fight. Astra might also try to take some sort of peek on the left side of the smoke here.
Nice.
Unknown.
Yeah, so the movement is towards this. You can see it just from a still frame, right? Like she's moving a little bit to the left, right? And then Vice is like a little bit on the back foot, right? So she's not going to be peeking on top of this in the next 2-3 seconds, right? If I'm the Astra here, if I can see my Vice silhouette like this, I know that if I need to peek out here, there is no timing for me until someone actually runs into my Vice's line of sight. You see what I mean? So just based on this, like zero communication involved, just looking at her, I can tell that she's not gonna jump here. She's not gonna peek deep right now, right? So I can't run out like on an aggro. I have to wait and be patient until someone runs into her line of sight. Okay. Same thing for me as a Vice. If I see my Astra playing here, I could actually go ahead and take an early fight to create a better timing for the Astra. You know what I mean? So it's no communication required. All you have to do is like sort of watch the silhouettes of your teammates, right? And pay a little bit attention to like where their momentum seems to be going, right? Like, are they moving towards an aggressive position? Are they holding for something? Or are they trying to fall back out of a situation, right? The very, very important skill, reading body languages. It tells you most things about like how fights are gonna happen. Obviously you have to read your opponent's body languages as well, but it's almost like arguably like way more important to read your teammates' body languages. Okay, once you understand these situations, you can coordinate without saying anything, right? And that again allows you to talk about other things, like, you know, just like what is happening onto the side, so you can fall for rotations, right? Guys that are hitting B side rather than talking about how to peek, right? So it creates like this really nice bandwidth.
Cypher's top mid.
Okay, I don't want to show this. Red nose isn't here.
Also, come on, that's pixels, dude. That's pixels. That third nef should have hit.
Yes.
Showing slow
It hit the cat ears. It hit the cat ears.
It's true. Unlucky, but we won't look deeper into this. But you get the idea about silhouettes.
That was, I am deadass. That was like one of the worst 10 mans.
That was a rough 10 man.
That was a rough game. Okay, moving on.
Blue, how would you coordinate like without talking? If Vice has like a flash, how do I know he's gonna flash and I peek off of it without talking? It's like,
so in this situation, okay. So one, obviously you need to hear a lot more. Like one more thing about this game is like audio cues are so much more important than visual cues almost. It's almost like you have to play by your ears more than your eyes. I know it's a bit of an exaggeration, but the other aspect, especially in pro play, is because you play off of comms a lot more than visuals. Because we play more on spam, we play more on pre-fires, right? And all of that is either audio cues of the game and comms, obviously, right? So the blind you can hear coming in, right? You can hear the dash. Again, if you can see the silhouette of your Vice here as the Astra, then you can sort of tell that she's falling back, right? So drone comes in here, take this position. This is a really nice repositioning from from the Astra, because we need someone to anchor on the side. Okay, dash happens, blind you can hear, right? And here you can see that is falling back. So again, no comps really needed, right? He's getting dived on, right? You can see the recon, you can hear the blind being used, right? You can hear the dash being used as well. So in this situation, again, especially if you have a phantom, right, you should generally just spam in this direction where the jet might have dashed, which is on the left side of the box. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, and obviously you won't peek outside of the smoke here. There's no timing for you to peek outside of the door, the smoke here. There's no distraction for the people who are scaling on you. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, and no comms needed for any of this, right? You can just observe things and like adopt. Does that answer your question, Yellow? Is that like, or are you thinking about something?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Dashed in on you.
I got you, man.
So he calls it that he dashed in on you. I don't think he shoots because either he doesn't want to show his position or he's running a vandal. I'm not sure.
On box.
W.
Yeah, he's running
One
a
tap.
vandal. So if he's running a vandal, he can't shoot because he will just get traded. It's a bit unfortunate. Like he had one option to fall back out of the smoke and take this fight and then reposition, but again, playing on site gives him better times. If you want to watch more funny things, we can just let this play out.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
But
You-
it was a very
No, I got him. It's okay, I got him. It's
It's
fine.
it was a very, very funny 10 man.
That was okay. Moving on.
Okay, so again, paying attention to the silhouettes of your teammates. Again, without calming, you can coordinate how to peek. Mostly we use it for double peeks. The way we go about it is there is one entry, the guy who's playing ahead of me, right? As a player behind him, I pay attention to his body language. I try to try to predict when he's gonna peek, and usually you can. It's a skill that's relatively easy to learn. You can learn it very early on, actually. Like if you're gold, you can learn it. And without comps, you can double peek. Double peeks, obviously, in this game are broken. Other things that we can use the silhouettes for is to create distractions. Like in this situation, for example, right? The Astra can wait until the Vice takes contact and then use that as a distraction to get a peek in, right? It allows. Go on.
Oh, I said, I'm guessing if you're the guy behind, you still have to come if you're like have to reload or something. Something that the
yes.
guy in front of you doesn't know.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing to notice is the guy who's in front cannot actually see silhouettes or your body language at all, right? So as a person playing in front, you have to sort of, every chance you get, like when you're not about to take a fight, it's good to check the map. You won't be able to see exactly what the teammates are doing, but you can see the direction that they're looking in. Right, so let's go back to this. Right, if I'm on the map, like if I'm here, for example, I can see the direction that my jet is looking in, which is like she's marking this angle about to peek into heaven if I'm the solo, right? Even though I'm playing in front, on the map I can check like what she's doing, right? Yes, Tevaka.
Yeah.
Right, but that also gives you like a responsibility if you're playing up front, which is right. Okay, you're not gonna be seeing a lot more things, so you need to communicate about when to peek and stuff a little bit more. Be a little bit more aware. Another thing that we do, apart from body languages, is let's say you're playing forward, right? Like you're playing the solo, and their jet is about to come peek here. Not that that's happening here, but she's about to peek here and take like a duel with the Cypher. Maybe he's playing up top, right? What you can do is like pay attention to the bullets, almost feel them. Like you can bump into your players every once in a while, like to see exactly how far they are, right? To feel exactly how far they are, right? But there is a little skill set that you can develop like that. Like without looking on the map, without looking behind you, without turning around, you can sort of feel like how close your teammates are behind you, right? If they're close enough, their barrel would stick out in your like POV as well every once in a while, right? So those are things worth considering. You're saying something? Okay. All right. So that's body language mostly, right? And we also use it to create timings, you know, other stuff. And we do some drills. If you have a team, if you're running a team, it's a drill that we use is like a 3v2 no comp retake. My favorite drill is somewhere like this, actually here. You go on ascent, and what I make my teammates do is one player goes here, another player goes here, right? And I ask one player here to hold down an op line like this. Okay. And also ask like one of their teammates to play here or like some random position. Okay. And the idea is the jet picks based on their own accord, whatever they like to do. Let's say they want to do a shoulder peek to bait out the op shot, or wide peek to bait out the op shot, right? They do these peaks on their own, no comps, and the player behind them is supposed to observe their movement, predict whether the jet is gonna go for a jump peek, shoulder peek, or wide swing, and then move accordingly to take this line. Okay, so it's a nice drill that you can use to learn these things if you're in a team. Okay, next thing. All right, now we talk a little bit more about macro. Okay, this was all micro, right? Like predicting based on like, you know, movement and utility, right? Next thing that you want to understand a little bit about is macro. Okay, macro adaptations. See, like there is an idea of playing ahead of the other team. Like you don't really want to be catching up on people. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. But to predict where people are going to be playing, like we said earlier, right? To understand what is missing, you need to understand what is expected, right? So to fix our expectations a little bit more, which is again a key part of this, just managing expectations, we need to understand different levels of meta. Okay? This is a little bit of a sidebar about this, but basic thing about meta is basically like a term that we coined. It's not really, you know, dictionary definition, but it's just like all the players have coined it. Basically, it's the collection of plays that we consider to be the correct way of playing, right? So the execute that we talked about here on Haven is sort of like the meta way to execute Seaside. Okay. So what you need to know to have like a good control over your gameplay and to have a good understanding of whether things are going right or wrong. Okay, so there are different levels of meta. Right, there's the global tier, pro tier meta, which is sort of what you want to consider as Bible. Right, this changes obviously with every patch. It changes, right? When people play professionally, they have to come up with new strategy, right? Because strategy becomes stale and gets countered, right? So we try to optimize the way to take any fight, you know, to take like the C execute, for example, right? So we look at the pro tier, we idealize it. This is not going to happen in your ranked games, okay? But it's important to know that this is the best way to play the game, okay? Then you want to standardize a level of gameplay that you're shooting for in your own games, which is whatever's happening in higher ranked games, like right above you. So let's say if you're a gold player, right? How are plat and diamond level players playing? You know, if you want to take a seaside, how are diamond players taking seasides, right? And this is obviously like also regional, right? Different regions have different approaches to the game. Southeast Asia, for example, like Singapore servers where I play, we play extremely aggressively. Like we will take every single timing that we get, like consecutively, right? We don't really play slow or wait for good timings, or we don't play for picks so much, which happens a lot more in Europe, for example. Like people play a lot more for picks, right? We default a lot more in Europe, right? So you want to understand what's happening in the in the games one level or 2 levels above your rank. Okay, and that's what we're gonna standardize. So that's what we're gonna shoot for, and that's what we're gonna play for. Okay, this is how you should play. Next is localized current rank meta. The rank that you're currently in, and then obviously in your own region, right? The games that you're running into, how do people usually play here, right? This is what we use for predictions. Obviously, this is a baseline prediction, right? It's not really how every game's gonna go, right? Some people don't play like this, but most people, again, if I'm playing in Platinum for, let's say, 2 months straight, right? I'm gonna learn all the habits from everyone else in my rank, right? So I'm gonna be playing exactly like, you know, what works for them. I'm gonna use that, right? So this is a good predictor, right? So you predict based on current level meta, and then you play based on higher level meta. Okay, then we idealize this in case someone as good as us or someone, you know, like great shows up in our ranks. Okay, so let's say if I'm playing in a platinum game, right, and I have like a diamond or ascendant one player on the other team, right, to beat him or her, I will need to know this, right, the pro tier meta. Okay, and then obviously going back to this, which is standardizing and predicting how people will generally play in our games. I need to observe, are they actually following this or not? Okay, because individually people all have quirks. Almost everyone has a pattern of playing. Okay? Your teammates would have it, your opponents would have it. It's good to go into games and see at the highest level we learn how to observe every single player, right? Like, so 9 players we get to observe, because obviously in teams we know our teammates a lot more, so we know their quirks already, right? And we study the opponents a lot as well. But in high immortal radiant, for example, most players can sort of keep track of 3 to 4 players at least, if not all 5, 6, 7, like what kind of mistakes are they making, how is their game progressing with every round, right? But you want to start with at least 1 to 2 players, like how are they playing. I would recommend paying attention to the top fraggers of the opponent team and the patterns that they're producing, right? Do they like to like wide swing a lot? Do they play with a lot of their utility? If they have ults online, like do they just use it right away, or do they like to save it for a good opportunity? You know, all these tiny patterns you want to pay attention to. Treat your games as you are playing against individuals, not just as a game that you're sitting in, you know, and adapting to random things that are happening. Okay, it's important to sort of really look at your opponents as individuals, like 3 or 4 people. Okay, so super important. All right,
but if you do observe and understand like how they're playing, I just feel it's really hard adapting.
Really?
Like being able to do something about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how to
Give me an
explain it,
example.
but like, no, when I'm thinking about it, it's quite easy. But in game, it's a lot harder to adapt than in reality. For example, like they're playing really aggressive on defense.
Yeah.
In reality, you just blind them and kill them with the entire team, but it's in ranked, it's really hard to adapt and just do that.
I see.
And yeah.
I want to understand why, because this is the approach that I've taken most of my time as a player, as a coach, coaching individuals or IGLing for teams, especially coaching teams, right? This is like something that it's like very, very fundamental. It's like observing like player quirks, you know, especially about their movements. Like every player moves like differently, you know, like some players like to like spray a lot more. Some people do AD shapes a lot more. Some do AD spam, you know, some go for wide swings. Right? And obviously as you counter them, they're gonna change their gameplay as well, right? Which is something that we'll get to later. It's how I've always approached it. It's difficult. I can see in like ranked, for example, let's say people
it's totally different in ranked.
I see, I see.
But,
So individuals
yeah.
punishing individuals, I think is relatively easy. But like in ranked, for example, let's say you understand that the teams are playing very aggressive on defense, so it's very likely they'll push down mid, right? And you want to do something about it as an individual. Which agent are you playing?
I usually Jet Duelist.
Jet Duelist. Okay. All right. So you want to do something about it. So in a team, like the counter for this is usually we throw like a recon here, and then we smoke either this off or smoke this off, right? And then maybe we'll use like a flash or something to take fights here, right? So usually this is the kill zone that we go for. Okay. Now you can even go as far as let them come all the way here, give them all the space, because they can't really push past this, right? Like any aggro plays from mid, like their job is to get kills here most of the time, right? This is the kill zone for them, right? But if you let them come all the way here, right, they get stuck in like a stalemate, right? They can't really push past this. It becomes really, really problematic. So you can either play here, take some space C, take some space A, right? This is what you would do in a team, right? So again, back to like, what have we done so far? We have done, okay, let's remove this. We have understood like the idealized meta, which is to stop them here. Standardized meta, actually, idealized meta is like to give them the space. Standardized meta is to stop them here, right? And then we make some prediction based on current ranks, which is my teammates are gonna probably fight them before they even get here. Yeah, like we are gonna peak here as they're pushing mid, right? So what can you do as an individual, right, to adapt to this? Okay, so let's try to come up with a solution. So this is what we do in standard meta, right? What can you do here? You could actually use like a smoke here as you go up, right? Like a little bit closer would be nice as well. Activate your dash, right? Climb up on this thing, okay? Or in fact, like I would say, like if this smoke is here, you can go for like this fight early. You see what I mean? So as people are crossing up, right, you can take this line early. You see what I mean? So what you're doing is you're minimizing your risk by activating your dash, right? So you have an escape plan basically here, right? You're intercepting them before they can take contact with your teammates, right? And you're protecting the person who is most likely to fall for this, which is this window picker. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, with the smoke.
I was gonna say, if you want to be really obnoxious, you could reverse Odin spam through the wall.
Right, I mean, yeah, that's always nice. I like that. It's hard to catch people because it's like very broad, right? Like when people come out, like this, like a lot of spaces, right? So an Odin spam might not catch exactly the people that you want. But here again, I'm assuming maximum incompetence from my teammates. Okay, we're not gonna be judgmental. Maximum like aggression from my teammates and maximum aggression from them, which is a nightmare for me as a Jet player because I can't flash these guys. I can't stop these guys, right? So in this like worst case scenario, how can I deal with this? So I can't put a smoke here because they're just gonna get past it. I can't really hold the smoke, you know, that's not a possibility for me. So I'm gonna smoke here, so it gives me the space to play. You know what I mean? And the other smoke I can send here. I would probably do this first and do this later because this is more important, right? My biggest threat is my teammate dying here. You know what I mean? So this is my first thing to do, which is like stop their lines of sight here, so the fights are easier for him, and he's protected for a little bit. Okay.
Would you think that dashing from window and smoking in between grass and garage door and the like sorry, like it's hard to show, like a bit more to the right,
okay, like this,
like a bit more, just like that piece of cover, and like dashing into that smoke, and then just sort of like weaving back and forth and trying to like help the fights that way. Would that also be good?
So that's too much risk. The reason why we're only activating the dash and playing wide is because we also want to stay alive. You know what I mean? Even if this person dies, right? We want to wait out. If you actually dash into this area, right? So now what you've done is like you have consumed your dash like entirely. You don't have a fallback option anymore, right? So if you do get pinched and your teammates don't help you, you will die here, right? And then not only that, let's say you only get one kill here, right? And we survive this and they fall back. now you need to go back to maybe hit C site or A site, right? You won't have the dash either, right? Which probably not gonna have either anyway because we activated it here, right? But it's mostly that like once you commit to once you have consumed the dash to take a spot, you don't have like a fallback option anymore. You know what I mean? You can't leave here. You can't leave here. Certainly, you can't leave here. You know what I mean? Even if you smoke yourself, because it takes time, right? Leaving like this as well leaves you like vulnerable. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend using the dash to enter, because we when we dash into spaces, our job is to sort of create space for our teammates to play in, right? This dash doesn't really do that for us, right? If you dash like somewhere here, for example, right, and then if you peek like this, or peek like this to check this angle, right, that allows your teammates to play like a lot more, right? Because now the only angle they have to worry about is this one, right? So that creates this much space for them, right? But if you dash into this, your teammates can't necessarily follow up. You know what I mean? There's still a threat for him to peek here. It's still a threat for them to peek here, because this is still open. See what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So that is the case for micro adaptations a little bit more. Okay. And I hope you understand like how we're using these different ways to find out the right solution for the situation. Okay. Does that help you? Help?
Yeah, that was really great. Thanks.
Lovely. Okay. And last thing I would consider talking about is macro adaptation cycle, which is a little bit more about strategy. Okay. Something that is I say this thing a lot, which is you don't want to be like super reactive. It's better to play proactively, right? So there is a cycle that happens, like strategic cycle that happens in most games. Again, this isn't like high elo. We're not talking professional games, right? Most ranked games would only have like, if you're playing attack, your team is gonna have 2 strats tops most of the time, right? Which is like, okay, we either play default or we aggro and take some site, or if you're playing defense, for example, we have one default where we're playing more people on A side, another default where we're playing more people on C side. You know what I mean? More aggressively on C side. Those are like 2 strats that you run into most of the time, right? So the cycle usually works like this. Okay, you start with the default strat. Gets countered once. If you are unlucky, some of the times it doesn't get countered at all. And then if the game is really good, it gets countered a second time. Usually the second counter is going back to the default strat, or running it down, becoming like extremely aggressive, because that's a lot easier to coordinate, right? And by the time the second counter is over, by the time you observe it, ultimates become so prevalent that they take over the strategy in general, right? So this is like a very, very common cycle, which is default strat gets countered again, and the ultimates come online and they become the fundamental of the strategy. Okay, why is this important to understand? Once you know this is a pattern that happens in most of your ranked games. You can stay ahead of the cycle, which is what's more important, right? I've said this a lot before. It's really, really important to make the opponents play your game. Do not play into their game. Do not see their plays and then like adjust to them. It's better to force them to adjust to you, because it keeps them on the back foot. That's very like dominating way to play, which is usually really nice. Right. So if you know this cycle, you can jump the cycle earlier, right? And you can predict when the counter is about to happen. You know what I mean? So both your teams start with default strats. It's better to jump onto the counter earlier, or as their counter is approaching, you can almost hit the second counter first. Okay, so let's do this with an example. The example comes to my mind is Lotus. Lotus is very common. Okay, teams fight for this area, right? So the defenders continuously take this, right? So let's say I'm playing on defense, right? And opponents are playing attack, okay? And took this, my teammates took this area once, it worked well, twice it worked well. Okay, if I know the cycle in the third or fourth round, these guys are gonna figure out not to run out here at the beginning, but to re-clear this later. Yeah. Very, very common thing that happens on Lotus all the time, which is like, you know, game starts, attackers run into this, get naded, run into it again, get naded. Third time they sit here, right, and then try to re-clear this, right? And third time they usually don't succeed in re-clear. By the fourth time they figure out how to re-clear this with utility. Okay, very common thing that happen. Okay, if I'm defending, right, if I'm making all these predictions, you know, based on this cycle, right, what I can do is by the third time this happens, I can actually fake util here, right, and then they re-clear this at an off pace, and because I'm throwing fake utility, I can actually use that timing to take C control or push down B instead, right? So as they're re-clearing, which I'm predicting, right, I can establish like a bigger flank or better map control. You see what I mean? It's a bit of a macro thing, you know. It's hard to coordinate in ranked, obviously, but it's good to know these sort of cycles. Again, it's important to stay ahead of the cycle, right? Because if they get countered before they figure out the counter to your play, right, it sort of debilitates people. You know, how do we respond to something like this? Does that make sense?
It does.
Yep.
Obviously, a little bit more complex version of this we use in our professional games a lot as well, because we get to see how other teams countered things as well during our scouting, and obviously there's a lot more minds involved, you know. So like me, my IGL, second IGL, we're all thinking about how things are happening. We all know solutions already, so we make better predictions as well. But knowing this at a fundamental level can be really, really helpful to like stay ahead and drive the cycle rather than react into the cycle, playing catch up, so to speak. Okay. But yeah, those are the things that I will talk about today. There's obviously a lot of mid-rounding, which also counts as adaptation. If we talk about adaptations, it will take forever. But those are the things that we've talked about again. That hopefully we learned from this lecture, this class, is like one, setting expectations to remove tilt, super important. You know, like having the right expectations or none, whenever you know you can. Keeping adaptation as the core of your gameplay, not planning, not coordinating. Again, very, very common misconception, you know, which is like, okay, yeah, this is a team game, right? So you gotta play for coordination more than anything else. It's fun to coordinate, and it's like some of the best feeling you can have like while playing a game is coordination. But adaptation is the core of the gameplay. Right? When coordination fails, adaptation is gonna save your ass. Team fight essentials, right? The fundamentals that we talked about, like in taking a team fight, right? Isolation, you know, debuffing people, all that jazz. Micro and macro utility adaptation, body language, and meta levels. Okay. So are we on this? Do we have any questions?
I do have one question. I play quite a bit of controller. I play Omen on quite a few maps.
Okay.
And when I'm trying to like read body language of my teammates,
yeah,
I feel like with Omen, it's kind of like too slow if I like reading their body language, because to doing both smokes and then pulling out blind and then throwing blind is all like takes a bit of time.
I like that. Okay, yeah, it's a good question.
So would you say that I should be like more preemptive in that sort of context, and just hope that my teammates follow through, or not, or just throw minimal utility and try to keep pace?
It's a good question. Okay, so you have to be predictive. So a very good example is like, this is where I play as an Omen, right? For me, it's like if I'm playing solo, if no one else is like peeking this, right? I really like to start with this one way. It's like a very standard way to play, right? And the idea is if they brute force past the one way, I just blind them. They can't take this space, right? And they still insist, then I can use the smoke here and take this position, play for some spam, right? Let's say if I'm playing here, right, and I know something's happening on B, right, and I can't really tell like, you know, when they will need the smoke, right? And obviously I
Yeah.
can't rely on them to tell me when, right? Because communications they're messed up in ranked, right? So for me, it's a bit more like I have checks and balances where, like, okay, if the opponents cross this line, and if we have dropped this line as a team, you see what I mean? Right? Like,
Yeah.
if they cross this line, and if we've dropped this line, or like, then I'll just use the smoke here, you know?
Mhm.
And it is preemptive, 100%. If it's about your site, it's a lot easier. And you're 100% right that Omen utility takes a lot of time to deploy, right? So blinds even take a decent amount of time, right? Not to mention smokes.
Yeah.
So most of your reactive, like, you know, reading body languages and assisting people will have to be your gunplay. You know what I mean? Like peeking
Mhm.
at good timings and spamming at good timings. So that's the fastest, most reactive thing that you can do, right? But
Okay.
the smokes, they have to be preemptive, and like I said, you can have your checks and balances to sort of you know, linearize
See
it.
what fulfill the conditions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Speaking about Omen, if I have like, let's say Reina and ISO as a duelist,
No, nope,
do you think
unfortunate, but yeah.
do you think like adapting by having the only like solo controller as an entry is fine?
I would actually become passive, because these guys are gonna take a lot of duels, you know what I mean? So very likely that both of them will die, you know what I mean?
Or like on Icebox, where you don't even have duelist all the time, having like Omen TPing in
Yes.
to his own smoke or something.
Yeah.
Is that like fine adapting like that?
Oh, you meant in
or...
terms of entry. I see.
Yeah, entry. Sorry
See.
for being unclear.
No worries. So yeah, if you have Arena and an ISO, right, most likely your ISO is gonna play separate from your team.
Exactly.
So yeah, UI here, 100%. I would agree that you can do something like, okay, this person eyes, hopefully he eyes, but you throw a blind here, and then yeah, 100% you should go for the TPs here and entry for your teammates.
Because yeah,
So
losing the smoke is also quite bad, but
yeah, on attack it's not that bad, right? But on defense, like, surely you need to become like extremely passive, because you have two people who are going to be taking all the fights, you know.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
100% good to use this Omen as an entry. We do this a lot on Lotus. It's very, very affordable on attack to play stupid aggressive as the Omen, which means tipping here, right, tipping under here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also kind of on split, you play quite aggressive.
Yeah. Split is also very affordable to play aggressive Omen. All right.
Yep.
Okay. I'll count that as the end of the class. All right.
This
Thank you
was,
for the
you guys
class.
enjoyed this.
This was great.